What's going on, guys? Game with Captain Gravy here, out on the White Moose Lake in Alberta, Canada. I'm going to be showing you how to catch the three main biggest species in this lake: the lake trout, Atlantic salmon, and northern pike. Also, the biggest money and experience farms on this lake. Easily make back your trip and gain some nice experience along the way. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting out with lake trout. Lake trout will be found right here in this general area. I like to catch them mostly. We're not going to use a boat in this because for people who just don't want to use the boat, I'm just going to be fishing solely off this dock right here. So I'm going to throw the medium spoon out there. I like to use the medium spoon 1.5 ounce for a rod hook. Seems to be best. And just let it sink. And once we let that line sink, right before it touches down, we're going to start reeling it in. Oop, already barely missed it, or I did miss it, barely got it. And there it is, it's on the line. Indeed, a lake trout. It's a pretty small one. It isn't giving up too much of a fight. Lake trout can be a bit of a pain in the butt if you're not using strong enough gear. Easily you can land a trophy specimen of up to 32 pounds or something like that. My personal record is 31 pounds. Yeah, not too big, just a 9-pounder. My personal record is 31 pounds, but uniques have been known to get up to, I think, a maximum of 50 pounds on this lake. So you gotta watch out. This is my setup I'm using. I'm using the CCO Energizer 7' 10". The CCO Fireball 6000 has a maximum drag of 40 pounds. And I'm using fluorocarbon 0.2. Now, if I remember correctly, that has a test of 28 pounds. My drag is set to such that this reel is putting out 25 pounds right now. And that is able to land basically all trophy specimens. You'll get definitely a good fight if you land a unique one. But with this setup, you shouldn't have any problem. This is for more of like efficiency in catching, because if you want good experience, I'll show you in a second what I use for good experience fights. You have a possibility of the fish overpowering you, but that's not going to happen very likely unless you get the off chance and you do get a unique. But other than that, throw the medium spoon 1.5 ounce out there. That's another fish right there. I don't know what the heck just happened, but you know. Looks like we got ourselves a fighter on the line. Decent sized fish here. Anyway, cast out to that last tree you see there on the ridge over there. Right until it hits the bottom. Reel it out right before it hits the bottom. This thing is giving me a fight. Right before it hits the bottom. Reel in at 2 speed and just kind of flick it up and down. Get some twitching in there. Then go straight and slow, do whatever. It works pretty well. These lake trout just absolutely love this medium spoon. So you shouldn't have too much trouble getting lake trout in no time. After we pull up this fish, I'm going to show you how to catch Atlantic salmon. There's a big lake trout. Nice trophy 27-pounder right there. So I'm going to screenshot that one. 1,251 cash in game, 281 experience. Would have been a whole lot more had I used lower poundage gear, as I say. And so would have been more like 400 or whatever had I used my alternate setup, but we're going with this one for right now. And then we have gonna look at the salmon. Now salmon can actually reach larger sizes than the lake trout, but it's more rare, I'd think, because they're harder to catch in some aspects. So I'm going to switch over to rod number 5, which has a crankbait of 6 foot on it. We're going to put 30 foot on it. Switch over to rod number 5. And for Atlantic salmon, instead of coming over here, we're just going to go straight out in this direction. Atlantic salmon hang out in these deep waters over here, so you want at least a 23 foot diving crankbait, preferably 30. We're just going to let it come down, reel in at 1 speed. Now, it might take multiple casts, but in general, you should get one fairly quickly. Atlantic salmon are more of an experienced farm. They give more experience than the lake trout for their size. There's a fish. This setup I'm using right now is also part of the Chargers pack. 18-pound drag reel right here. So it is still pretty hefty. It's enough. I really like this setup. It's super balanced and really works for fighting these fish in. I've even landed a 26-pound trophy Atlantic salmon with this. It was giving me a run for my money. I almost lost my crankbait, but brought it in the end. So that was a really nice surprise to see a huge Atlantic salmon on the end of my line. Looks like another lake trout, actually. It is indeed another lake trout. You can also catch lake trout over here, but this is the preferable spot. I usually only get Atlantics when I cast out here. I'm going to throw that out again. See if we can get an Atlantic salmon to strike. So like I said, I wouldn't go anything below 18 pounds of drag and just overall 18 pounds or 20 pounds, just to round it out, is a good, unless you want to go insane and just fight it with super light gear. I suggest at least a minimum of 20 pounds test for everything, line, rod, and reel, to ensure that you lose any of your crankbaits, as crankbaits are very expensive. You can also throw lures out here, but crankbaits are in general just easier to use, and they're very effective. This looks like another lake trout. Lake trout are active today. Another good lake trout, only a 9-pounder, not too huge. So basically just in this whole quadrant right here, you want to be going after Atlantic salmon, and lake trout also reside here. Lake trout are far more abundant than Atlantic salmon, it seems. Some people have really good farms. Some days it just no action comes, and Atlantic salmon will not be biting, along with lake trout, which will be biting. So let's see if I can at least catch one Atlantic for the sake of this video. Then we'll move on to the northern pike. Before we move on to northern pike, your recommended tackle I use would be popper, crankbait 6 foot, or the crankbait 3 foot. Preferably the crankbait 6 foot. I found it works best. Let's see what we're pulling up here. It's a burbot. Burbot can be found right along here. They like to be close to the dock. I don't know what it is, but burbot, they hang out here. As long as you just drag your crankbait in, it's like a nice little surprise at the end of your cast if you catch nothing, I guess. But burbot aren't too good in terms of experience and money, so I wouldn't really waste your time going after them unless you want a hardcore burbot fish. One Atlantic salmon. We can see if we can do this. Just one. If you aren't getting Atlantic salmon, I suggest switching your crankbaits up. If you're using 23 foot, go to 30 foot. If you're using 30 foot, go to 23 foot, just to switch it up. You never know where they'll be hiding at, the different depths they like to be at. Right now it's 24 degrees, which is pretty warm for Alberta. So I think we'll switch the crankbaits up to 23 foot. And we'll throw out straight over in this direction. If I don't catch an Atlantic salmon on this cast, you guys just gotta believe me, there are indeed Atlantic salmon over here. Crankbait 30 foot or 23 foot. This lake has a huge depth variety. Like you'll be reeling in and all of a sudden it'll look like your crankbait dropped half of where it was. That's just because the lake is rising. Like right there. That's that little drop off point. And at that point, you just want to let it float up. And then reel it in a little bit. Then let it float back up. And then let it reel in a little bit. Anyway, we'll move on to the northern pike now. So what you want to do is you want to run all the way over here. Like to the very edge of this walkway right here. Here's good. Not all the way, but just barely. I'm going to start out with the popper. No, not the popper. Crankbait, 6 foot. And what you want to do is you want to just go straight in between these two logs right here. Or I should say that tree sticking out over there. Just go in between them. And use the 6 foot crankbait. Now, it might take a couple of casts, but usually the pike are pretty good about biting consistently. And pike for their size, just like on the St. Croix Lake, give amazing money values for how big they are. If you land a trophy, you can get some pretty good experience, but when you're fishing for pike, you're mainly after the money values that they give for how big they are. You can instantly fill up your keep net for how small and how much they give in money. So overall, very good farm. Also, other lures that they like is they like casting spoons, so casting spoon of your choice. They like the poppers, which I will switch it up here after I complete one more catch with this crankbait. They also like spinners. You can use spinners. But my two favorite are the poppers and the crankbaits. Now my fish activity is beginning to decline, so what you're seeing here, as long as you're in the peak, you'll probably be getting a whole lot more fishing action. But generally, when you're fishing in Alberta, I just fish all day long because the values are pretty steady all day. It's kind of like Emerald Lake in a way, but once you do reach the peak, you get lots of fish action. Catch some before the peak, just to get some extra cash in there. Then fish after the peak. You'll still get fish, just not at a horrendous rate like you did during the peak, obviously. So I think we're going to move to the popper. Again, throw in between. And do the popper action. You can also bobber fish for these northern pike. Just use shiners, a 3/0 hook, 40-inch lead, and throw just in front. There we go. I saw it coming up, knew it was following it. There we go, northern pike. For only 4 pounds, 335 bucks. So basically half the weight of a trout, but gives more, or at least the same amount as a trout, so, or a salmon for that matter. So definitely pike, a good way to fill up your keep net if you have the smaller keep net. Not as fun with fights though, because they are smaller. You're looking at maybe 20 pounds max here, because they only come in trophy sizes. No uniques here. If you want uniques, you head to Michigan. I do have a Michigan guide. I'll put that in the link for this video, showing you how I catch my pike in Michigan to make some amazing cash and experience. The thing I like about the popper is it always stays on, since it always stays on top, you can bring it in real close and the fish will still be following it, but since it won't touch the bottom, it never interferes with that. So you can still get fish fairly close in. Doesn't look like that's going to happen with this cast though. Nope. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. That was my guide to Alberta, Canada, how to make money and experience here pretty easily. Just peek the fish times, use the crankbaits, use the medium spoons, and just use powerful enough gear, because you will lose crankbaits and you will lose fish to how hard they can fight. This lake I think is one of the first lakes where you have a really decent struggle against some of the fish if you're not prepared. So if you're coming into Alberta, gear up, get some powerful stuff, and get ready for some awesome fights in the Alberta, Canada, White Moose Lake. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.